Welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight, Republicans prepare for a funding fight ahead of the November election.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris begins to fall behind in the polls.
And the House releases a devastating new report on the Afghanistan withdrawal. Well, we start in D.C., where House Republicans are now looking to tie a government funding bill with legislation requiring voters to show proof of citizenship in order to vote in federal elections. It's called the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, and it previously passed the House back in July. Republicans now hope that by coupling it with a continuing resolution, Democrats in the Senate will be forced to pass it in order to keep the government open. That's an idea recently suggested by Utah Senator Mike Lee.
Look, it must come up for a vote in the House and in the Senate. And the way to do that is for us to attach it to the next spending bill, likely a continuing resolution. It'll come up in September. We attach that to a spending bill, and that's the best way to move that through, to make sure that the 10 million plus illegal immigrants who have come in the last 3.5 years and the estimated roughly 30 million non-citizens total in the United States aren't voting in this November's election.
In a statement, House Speaker Mike Johnson said we must ensure that only American citizens can decide American elections, echoing comments he made earlier this year.
Should Americans and Americans alone determine the outcome of American elections? Or should we allow foreigners and illegal aliens to decide who sits in the White House and here in the People's House and in the Senate? Every Republican, emphatically, every one of our colleagues here says yes. The answer to that question is yes.
Now, it's a major gamble for Republicans as government funding is set to expire at the end of the month, risking a possible government shutdown only a month before the presidential election.
At the same time, Judge Juan Merchan has decided to delay Trump's sentencing until November 26th. Merchan wrote in a letter on Friday, quote, "The public's confidence in the integrity of our judicial system demands a sentencing hearing that is entirely focused on the verdict of the jury and the weighing of aggravating and mitigating factors, free from distraction or distortion." He added that the complexity of our times would make a sentencing hearing difficult to execute. Merchan also stated that he wants to avoid any appearance that the hearing is designed to affect the presidential election's outcome. The judge issued the ruling after Trump's lawyers requested that he delay the original sentencing, which was set for September 18th, so that they could appeal a pending ruling on Trump's presidential immunity. That ruling was scheduled for September 16th, a date that Trump's lawyers deemed unreasonably rushed. Considering these things, Judge Merchan also postponed the immunity ruling to November 12th. And Trump commented on the judge's decision by saying people realized there was no case and that it was simply a witch hunt.
Possibly some good news for the former president there. Meanwhile, across the aisle, bad news could be on the horizon for Kamala Harris, with new polling showing her so-called honeymoon period is coming to an end. A brand new New York Times Siena poll shows Donald Trump currently leading Harris by 1 point, 48% to 47%. That's basically a tie, but it does mark the first pollster other than Rasmussen to show Trump ahead in nearly a month. Renowned poll analyst Nate Silver of 538, he reacted to that poll, saying it confirmed his model's view that, quote, there's been some sort of a shift in momentum in the race. Silver currently believes there's a nearly 64% chance that Trump will win the election this year, compared to a 36% chance for Harris. His model also predicts an absolute blowout election for Trump, winning 312 electoral votes compared to Harris's 226. All of this serves to put more pressure on Harris ahead of tomorrow's debate, as 28% of likely voters say they still feel like they need to know Harris more, while only 9% said the same about Trump.
And as we approach the presidential debate, one group of Christians is trying to provide a guideline for other believers on how to go into the voting season. FISM's Ian Patrick gives us more information on this.
The tension surrounding the 2024 election is certainly palpable, and it's tense to the point that a group of evangelical Christians has released a guideline for other believers on how they think the church should approach the voting booth this year. Under an initiative titled A Call to Revival, a group of hundreds have come together to issue an evangelical conviction. This list is proposed as a guidance during what they call a moment of, quote, social conflict and political division. Its ultimate goal is to, quote, uphold the truth of the gospel in the face of political pressure and cultural shifts, as well as to pray for Christ's people to be agents of his presence and blessing in this turbulent age. The confession consists of 7 main pillars, which are as follows. 1, we give our allegiance to Jesus Christ alone. 2, we will lead with love, not fear. 3, we submit to the truth of Scripture. 4, we believe the gospel heals every worldly division. 5, we are committed to the prophetic mission of the church. 6, we value every person as created in God's image. And 7, we recognize godly leaders by their character. Each of these pillars makes a reference to recent events or themes from this year's presidential election. For example, the second pillar rejects what it calls the stoking of fears and the use of threats as an illegitimate form of godly motivation, as well as the rejection of violence to achieve political goals. The fourth pillar rejects attempts to divide the church along partisan, ethnic, or national boundaries. And the fifth pillar specifically calls on the church to continue its work as a moral guide for societal issues, while rejecting attempts to turn the church into a mere vehicle of political or social power. Some of the signatories on this list include prominent Christian officials, educators, and figures. Among the massive list is rapper Lecrae, Christianity Today editor-in-chief Russell Moore, and VeggieTales creator Phil Vischer. Among the project's resources is also a cartoon made by Vischer, which essentially explains the gist of this list.
He wants to destroy my way of life.
According to who?
The guy on TV.
Who you believe why?
Because he's on TV.
He's trying to get you to vote for him by making you afraid.
I should be afraid.
Jesus says we don't have to be afraid because he's always with us.
All the time?
All the time.
Even when someone's trying to mess with our roads?
I think he's just saying that to make us afraid. But even if they were trying to mess with our roads...
Or small bridges.
We don't have to be afraid because God is with us.
So what do we do with this guy?
Well, that's pretty easy.
Now, while there are no overt references to either political party or party candidate in the overall list, some aspects of the entire campaign appear to be aimed at or directed towards Donald Trump. Even one of the signatories happens to be Ekmini Uwan, who was the host of the controversial Evangelicals for Harris meeting. And other signatories have also been previously critical of Trump and his campaign, and that does include Christianity Today's Moore. Even the wording in some of the pillars seems to suggest similar reactions to what Trump may have said or done in the past couple of months. And others still who have signed on to this say they want to avoid being pigeonholed as politically conservative just because they also happen to be evangelical Christians. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks so much for breaking that down for us, Ian. We really do appreciate it. And before we go to a break here, it does look like Joe Biden is now trying to shore up the union vote for his vice president, Kamala Harris. On Friday, the president signed what he called a common sense executive order aimed at prioritizing federal projects for union workers along with higher wages.
For jobs created using federal dollars, good jobs executive order will call on a federal agency to protect the workers, the power of the workers to encourage the free and fair choice to join a union. My executive order goes on to call on federal agencies to include high labor standards in grants that we give, prioritizing projects that pay wages you can raise a family on and provide benefits like child care.
Biden's so-called good jobs order also includes other benefits as well, including apprenticeship programs. Biden dared any future president to undo the order and risk offending the unions, saying, quote, "From this point onward, any president who disagrees with that is going to have to say so out loud, say it to your face, and repeal that order, and I want to see them try to do it." All right, and with that, up next, the House releases a devastating new report on the Afghanistan pullout. The detail on that report and more after this short break.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
When a woman experiences an unplanned pregnancy, she's faced with a difficult decision. Preborn connects with life-affirming pregnancy clinics across the nation and provides them with free ultrasound sessions for expectant mothers. When a mother sees her baby on an ultrasound and hears their heartbeat, it doubles the chance she'll choose life. Visit preborn.com/life to save a baby's life.
Fear and uncertainty can cause us to hold things tightly and rely on ourselves. But during uncertain times, as believers in Christ, we are called to surrender fully to our sovereign God. Learn a biblically responsible investment strategy proven over 25 years. Keep the money God has entrusted to you out of companies that participate in things that God detests. Fully surrender. Become a Financial Issues Partners today.
Welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, let's continue with a GOP report that revealed the details of the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. Republicans from the House Foreign Affairs Committee dealt a heavy blow to President Biden for choosing to leave Afghanistan despite allies and military council advising against it. The report, titled "Strategic Failure," reads, "The evidence proves President Biden's decision to withdraw all U.S. troops was not based on the security situation, the Doha Agreement, or the advice of his senior national security advisors or our allies." The report said there was ample evidence and direct testimony from American military leaders and top NATO allies that they wanted to keep troops in Afghanistan. To make matters worse, the report said the administration repeatedly delayed critical action that was necessary to mitigate the likely consequences of the decision. Finally, the report blamed Biden for the chaotic and deadly military withdrawal, which critics say could have been prevented.
And that report now comes as U.S. troops are allegedly preparing to also withdraw from Iraq following a reported deal between Washington and Baghdad. There are around roughly 2,500 U.S. troops stationed in Iraq right now as part of a coalition formed back in 2014 in order to fight ISIS. This new deal calls for a phased withdrawal that will finish in 2026, with hundreds of soldiers leaving in the next 12 months. Newsmax reported the deal based on anonymous sources involved in the discussions. They say there should be a more formal announcement later this month.
Elsewhere, an American protester was also shot dead while protesting against Israel occupation in the West Bank. The White House said it was deeply disturbed by the death of the 26-year-old Turkish-American man. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called the Israeli forces barbaric for shooting at the demonstrators. Israel said they were investigating the situation, and according to the IDF, they targeted a man who was posing a threat to military members.
At the same time, still in the West Bank today, a Jordanian man yesterday shot and killed 3 Israeli civilians working at a major crossing point between the West Bank and Jordan. That shooter was killed on site by Israeli security forces. It's the first act of violence in recent years between Israel and Jordan, who have been at peace since 1994. The shooter has now been identified as a member of the influential Huwaitate tribe in southern Jordan. Israel is calling the shooting an act of terrorism. Meanwhile, Jordan has closed down the crossing while it investigates the incident.
Meanwhile, Yemen's Houthis claimed yesterday to have downed another multi-million-dollar U.S. drone. A spokesman for the Iranian-backed rebels says they destroyed an MQ-9 Reaper drone, which cost $30 million apiece. However, the statement was pre-recorded and did not show any evidence. Houthi-linked media says that the U.S. retaliated with several airstrikes near the city of Ib, and the U.S. military responded that it had no reports of the drone's destruction, but did confirm taking out 2 missile systems in a Houthi-controlled area of Yemen. They also destroyed 3 drones.
And before we go to a moment in history, we have some disturbing news here in the U.S. where a Pakistani man accused of plotting a terror attack against American Jews was arrested in Canada last week. The DOJ says this suspect was planning to attack a Jewish center in Brooklyn on October 7th, on the exact anniversary of Hamas's brutal terror attack in Israel. This suspect had told undercover FBI agents that his goal in this attack was to slaughter as many Jewish people as possible, all in the name of ISIS. Canadian police arrested the suspect as he tried to enter the U.S. He's now been charged with attempting to provide material support and resources to a terrorist organization. All right, and with that, we have plenty more news coming up next. We'll be right back after we go to Seth Udinsky for today's A Moment in History.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In history, there are several monumental figures we can point to, people who lived during crucial times and helped shape the course of human civilization. In the West, we have several, Washington and Lincoln in our own country to be sure, but let's not forget the European figures like Queen Elizabeth, for example, or Martin Luther. But in Western civilization, none of these figures would have any real meaning or significance without the Roman Empire, which, in my opinion, second only to Christianity, is the driving force that laid the foundations for Western civilization. And no man in Rome was more prominent than its first emperor, Caesar Augustus. Now, Augustus had several titles. He was born as Octavian, but upon his rise in the Roman political sphere, he was granted the title of Augustus, which loosely translated basically means exalted one. He was born in 63 BC into the familial dynasty of the most important Roman statesman at the time, Julius Caesar. Octavius earned the respect and admiration of his uncle Julius, who named him as his adopted heir, and that's a practice that actually would become commonplace in the empire. Julius rose to prominence as the dictator of Rome, and he was essentially the first emperor over a dying republic that was morphing more and more into an empire. Now, upon Julius' assassination in 44 BC, civil war broke out between young Octavius, the rightful heir to the throne, and his political opponent, Mark Antony. Octavius defeated Antony and established his dominance over the former republic in the late 30s BC. Also sparing the Roman populace from descending into chaos. Now, the official beginning marker of Octavius' reign is 27 BC, and it's here that he was given the title of Exalted One by the Roman political elites. Thus, historians name him as the first official emperor of the new empire, one that would lay the foundation, by the way, for an entire civilization. Octavius also took the name Caesar because of his familial lineage, and for the next 2,000 years, absolute monarchs in Western civilization would take this title of Caesar in various translations and titles. So Caesar Augustus was a skilled ruler, and he actually established the period known to historians as the Pax Romana, which in Latin means Roman peace. It was essentially the golden age of the empire, which would last for roughly 200 years before the crisis in the 3rd century, which would lead to the downfall in the 4th and 5th. Augustus strengthened the empire's military force, and the size grew massively during his 40 years on the throne, stretching throughout Europe, Asia, and North Africa around the Mediterranean Sea. He accomplished peace through war, and this set the stage for Rome's dominance over the known world for the next 500 years. So the Roman Empire began with Augustus and lasted in the west until 476 and in the east until 1453, though, as we said earlier, the civilization has continued in many ways to this day. Augustus died in 14 AD, replaced by his adopted son Tiberius. Now we have to mention, his most famous mark on history among all his accomplishments was actually the census he enacted around the year 4 BC, because this forced a young Jewish man named Joseph to take his soon-to-be bride to the city of Bethlehem, where she gave birth to a son and called his name Jesus Christ. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Do you want to invest in biblically responsible stocks? Financial Issues can help. For only $132 per year, our team of experts will help you make wise decisions with your money and guide you to successful investments that will not dishonor God. You'll also have access to our Portfolio Tracker tool, which will help you keep an eye on your asset allocations, and our Buys and Sells page, which will give you valuable information about biblically responsible stocks. Being a Financial Issues partner is the best way to invest in accordance with biblical values. Make the most of your money by becoming a partner today. Sign up at financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
When I took the test, I knew that I had other options. I was really scared. I know that it's really easy to get an abortion in New York. I've been down the other road before, and it really was a negative experience for me. And it felt like I did it because it made things easier for my partner at the time. And this time I thought, I think I want a different story. I'm just really scared. And she said, we'll take it a page at a time. It felt scary, but it felt like a good thing. I'm gonna have to, if I have this baby, I'm gonna have to do it alone, and that's gonna be really challenging. But I wanted to do it. But I knew that I needed help, and to get around people that would help me. Not people who would say, this is a problem that we can make go away. More like, this is awesome and we can help you make it more awesome.
All right, and welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. We kick off this segment here with what is a major win for religious freedom. Last week, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a ruling protecting Christian colleges from losing their federal funds over their beliefs on LGBT issues. As explained by the Christian Post, at issue here is whether the appeals court would have revived a lawsuit filed by a group of LGBT students against Christian schools that they claim discriminated against them on the basis of their sexual orientation or their gender identity. The Post also reports that the appeals panel unanimously upheld the religious exemption given to Christian schools under Title IX and their federal civil rights laws. Notable universities named in this lawsuit include Bob Jones, Baylor, Cedarville, and Liberty University, among other schools.
And regarding government funding, New York City now pays migrants to move out of homeless shelters and obtain housing. According to Fox News Digital, the Democrat-run city has offered $4,000 to 150 migrant families and an additional $1,000 in gift cards for moving expenses. The new program is called Asylee Move-Out Assistance, and it was first rolled out in 2023 as an extension of the New York City Department of Homeless Services and city shelters housing asylum seekers. Those eligible for the program must be asylum seekers or pregnant women in select DHS shelters. However, a Department of Social Services spokesperson said that this program is small and isn't a citywide effort. The spokesperson also said that the money comes from existing agency funds, not city funding. New York City has spent $4.6 billion on the migrant crisis since 2022, and their latest migrant support effort comes as asylum seekers have overrun the city's homeless shelters.
Something we've covered quite a bit here on FISM News, the ongoing migrant problem in New York City. We'll continue to cover that as there are developments. Meanwhile, speaking on that issue, more bad news where American-born workers lost more than 1.3 million jobs over the past year. That's according to Labor Department data released on Friday. At the same time, though, foreign-born workers here in the U.S. gained more than 1.2 million jobs. And it should be noted, this is very important, that number is not distinguishing between green card holders and illegal immigrants. To make matters even worse, the data also comes alongside a weaker than expected jobs report as well. The economy added 142,000 jobs in the month of August, falling short of the expected 160,000 jobs. At the same time, it also revised down June and July data, cutting 86,000 jobs from the previous report, making July the lowest non-farm payroll reading since December of 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic.
That's certainly troubling to hear. Meanwhile, lastly, thousands of Brazilians rallied for free speech on Saturday as the country's Supreme Court banned the social media site X. At the end of August, the Brazilian Supreme Court, under the left-wing judge de Moraes, banned the platform after Musk refused to delete conservative accounts on X associated with former right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro, who is blocked from running for office until 2030, called for a rally in Sao Paulo on the country's Independence Day. Supporters of their former leader were seen wearing Brazilian colors while championing Elon Musk and his free speech absolutist values. According to the court's ruling, anyone who is caught bypassing the social media ban will be fined $9,000 per day. Andre Roman, the CEO of Brazil-based pollster Atlas Intel, said that some of these measures that the Supreme Court has adopted appear to be quite onerous and abusive. And of course, I can only agree with that.
Yeah, well, it's quite troubling that this isn't even just going after Elon Musk. We were talking about this during one of the breaks.
Right.
It's not just going after him, but if you're in Brazil and you want to somehow work around that and get on X, they're going to come after you. And, you know, people use X to speak freely and also to get the news. So this is really going after the Brazilian people as well.
Right, which is quite scary. All right, well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for any updates until our next show tomorrow, be sure to follow us on social media at FISM News, or you can also download the FISM app to take us on the go. Thanks so much. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night with more news coverage.
It's a challenging world that we live in right now. There's a lot of corporations that frankly stand for some pretty evil things. We need to be responsible stewards of our money and putting it in companies that will support our values and the things that we stand for as followers of Jesus. And certainly the ministry that FISM is doing helps us to be directed in that way and to be responsible with our financial assets.
We decided to become partners. That was probably the best decision that we ever made. It has given us the security of knowing that we don't have to be afraid.
If you are interested in equipping yourself to engage boldly in the culture, I would just highly recommend availing yourself of the Ministry of Financial Issues.